Irish Illustrated Insider subscribers. This is Drew Mentak, and I'm here to bring you a new bi-weekly podcast series on the feed, Irish Illustrated Interviews. In this show, I'll bring you one-on-one, long-form conversations with people connected to the Notre Dame football program, exploring how they first encountered the team, how they remain connected, and the impact the program and university have on them today. I'll interview former players and coaches, members of the media, and others working within the ever-growing Fighting Irish athletics department. We're beginning with my interview with former Notre Dame defensive back Shaun Crawford, who overcame 2 torn ACLs and a torn Achilles to start his final 2 seasons and become a team captain. After school, he signed with the Las Vegas Raiders as an undrafted free agent before another injury halted his football career, this time for good. That led him down an unforeseen path. In 2022, he launched the Varsity House Podcast with an interview with Marcus Freeman. Over the years, he's branched out into other projects. Recently, he began to produce Irish Scoop, an in-season podcast hosted by a fighting Irish football player. Last fall, Notre Dame nickelback Jordan Clark served as the show's frontman. Now that Clark is with the New York Jets, Crawford has found a new host, which he discusses towards the end of this episode. We also delve into his Notre Dame professional careers and touch on other topics, such as who were the best Notre Dame players he played with and why he defends Brian Kelly to this day. Here's my interview with Shaun. Shaun, thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on. I appreciate you, last year connecting. And so, when you reached out, of course, definitely wanted to make time to do this.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And it's definitely been cool to kind of follow your journey. And speaking of, so I'm not sure what episode of Irish Illustrated interviews we will publish first, but you're the first person I'm interviewing for the show, which feels fitting because you launched your own podcast about 3 years ago, and you started off by interviewing Marcus Freeman, MTA, and Avery Davis. And we definitely want to get to all that and what you're doing with Varsity House Productions. But I want to start by asking you how you first heard about Notre Dame and what's your first memory of the university?
Um, First heard about Notre Dame. I think like everyone else was Rudy. Just growing up as a football fan. Grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, so just in the Midwest. But it's as everyone knows, it's Buckeye country here. But I think being able to just tune into a movie like Rudy, I think that was the first time that I ever heard of Notre Dame. And then even just growing up in looking at schools and playing football and things like that, I never dreamed or I never thought of, going to Notre Dame. I was actually, everyone knows this now, but I was a Michigan fan and committed to Michigan. So it was just, that's where I thought I was going to go. That's all I watched, like Mike Hart, Chad Henne, Lloyd Carr, who now nephew is, at Notre Dame. So just being able to, that was the team that I was a fan of. That was the university that I was a fan of, and somewhat hated Notre Dame because of it. So everything. It's funny how it all turned out, though.
So how come you weren't a fan of Ohio State?
My dad introduced me to the game of football, and he loved Michigan. He loved Charles Woodson, Desmond Howard, those players. And so just growing up, it was always go blue. It was never, and then once you start to grow up and you start to see some of the Ohio State fans, you realize like, oh, these guys are annoying, and so being able to just like go, grow up and root against them, it was always fun. Michigan didn't get many wins when I was a fan. It's obviously shifted now, but so it was my dad. He grew up in Michigan, or he instilled the go blue in me, and so that was pretty much the only reason. And then when I actually got to take visits and stuff, like I ended up loving campus, and Ohio State I've actually even never took a visit to.
Looking back at kind of your recruiting timeline, you visited Notre Dame in the spring, I think of 2014, and then a few days later you decommitted from Michigan. What did you see on that visit that kind of let you go of your childhood favorite team and flip to one of their rivals?
It was honestly just what BK, Coach Kelly was doing with the program, from just, and it kind of also where Michigan was headed. I think when I committed there, it was like Denard Robinson and that regime that I was growing up watching, Rich Rodriguez, and then turned into Brady Hoke, who I had a love for in the recruiting process. He was a great guy, and Coach Greg Madison as well, who's just a legendary defensive coordinator who was at Michigan at the time. And so when I went there, I loved it. Visited, numbers of times because it's so close to Cleveland. And then like rewind a little bit before I even committed to Michigan, I took a visit to Notre Dame and wasn't an official visit, just unofficial visit, just going up there and never seen the campus before, first time. And when I first walked on campus, it was just like you can ask anyone who first time who walks on Notre Dame campus, and it's the feeling that you can't really describe, but feels like home. Is warm. I want to say it was like a fall day, so like the leaves were turning and things like that, and so it was just an amazing experience. And I went to a Catholic high school myself, it's a Brothers of Holy Cross school in Lakewood, Ohio. And so it just kind of just felt like home. It was like it felt like the next step for me. And so when I went there, Bob Diaco was the DC, actually hated me just because I wasn't his typical corner, which I understand. Like now looking like as a kid, hearing that in a meeting room, you're like, oh, I hate this place. I'm never coming here. But then like you see the guys that he had, Kavari Russell, Bennett Jackson, taller corners, who fit his scheme and completely like now looking back, it makes sense. So that was it. That was it. And then I left there and I was like, like I hate, like I'm not going to Notre Dame. It's over. Like cool school though, but I'm not going to Notre Dame. Committed to Michigan. And then just played my junior season, and then everything just kind of opened back up. Coach Heastan actually came to visit the school. Coach Kelly, we started talking again, and he kind of when we first started talking again, he addressed the Coach Diaco situation because BVG was now stepping in, so he kind of wanted to just like say that we had interest in you. That was kind of a DC decision and things like that, or Diaco's decision. And wanted me to talk to BVG and just really start to get comfortable with the coaching staff and reestablish that relationship. And so we were good. And for me, my dad was excited. Like my dad's like, you're like Michigan, we're all in on Michigan. My mom was excited about Michigan. So then, but like, I just was like, dude, I wanted to, and both my parents are in education. So either like Michigan or Notre Dame, they were, they didn't really care, but they were just saying that we'll take a visit, we'll go to Michigan because Michigan had I think it was an official visit, and then Notre Dame a couple of days later had their Irish invasion, I believe, or it might have just been a visit. And so I went there. It just everything just same feelings, and then now just being able to talk to Coach Kelly, talk to BVG, and like them talk about a plan and actually feel wanted. The decision was already, made up in my mind. It was just now, having to call the coaches and do all those different things and, say I had to decommit. But, once I went there and the interest was mutual, it was a no brainer for me.
Did Diaco have that conversation with you when you came for the visit that like, we don't think you're a fit for our scheme? Like, I'm kind of curious how that got brought up because it seems like kind of a weird time to, I don't know, you get there and then say that. Sorry to
Because
put you on the spot.
no, I don't necessarily remember. It could have been because at that time I was heading into my junior season, and I definitely think they invited me out because we had the conversation in Coach Diaco's office. So it wasn't just like on the fly. We were talking to coaches or anything like that. So we had a scheduled meeting. We met, and that was kind of just saying, I think, and I appreciate him for being honest because he was just saying like, this is who we are. This is my scheme. We don't necessarily think you're a fit. But you're a great player. It's that type of stuff. And so we just kind of just shook hands and moved on. So it was just one of those things. And like I said, later, like literally left there and then committed to Michigan, probably right when I got back around my birthday. And so I just played my junior season. I was committed to Michigan. And then after my junior season, Coach Kelly and their staff started to just like, start reaching out again. And and at that time it was perfect time, and Coach Kelly had just went to a national title. Notre Dame is on the rise. BVG, he's playing a nickel defense, and so all these different things are just starting to make sense. Where Coach Hoke and Michigan was just on the decline, and so it all, I just feel like it all fell in place. Now,
Yeah.
if they got Harbaugh a little bit earlier, who knows what the situation would have been, But it was kind of like after, I think they hired Harbaugh like January-ish. So by that time I was locked in.
But I do want to get to like you actually getting to campus. I wasn't covering the team at the time, but I talked to some colleagues who were, and I know like you got to school, fall camp started, and it sounds like you won the nickel job like right away. But obviously, over the next 2 years, you had some injury troubles that, really kept you off the field. 20 that season, you tore your ACL. The next year, I think you had a pick in the first game of the season, and then the next game you rupture your Achilles. Most freshmen don't come in and see that they can be productive and play like that. And I'm kind of curious what it was like for you to come in and see that you were going to make an immediate impact and then have it kind of taken away so quickly as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, it kind of goes back to the coaches being honest. And I think, from day one, even with Coach Diaco and Coach Kelly, they were honest. And, Coach Kelly calling me and introducing me to BVG and having our conversations where, Coach BVG said he was going to give me the opportunity to come in and earn the nickel spot from day one. And Coach Kelly didn't, restrict him or restrict me, from trying to win that spot. And so, for me, it was just, a great year leading up into my senior year. I ended up going to the Nike opening where I was able to play with, guys you see on Sunday, Mika Fitzpatrick, Derwin James, Calvin Ridley, like what's the list goes. I mean, the list goes on.
Yeah.
Like my class was really, really good. And so being able to just play against those guys, coming out of high school and just throughout the off season of high school, just really allowed me to just, grow my game. And I've always been a confident player, obviously not the biggest player at all, but I always trusted my skill set. I trusted my feet. I was an AAU junior Olympic champion in track. So in terms of speed wise, like I always knew I could run fast and do all those different things. And so since I was 7 years old, I was running AAU and USA track. So I was competing across the state, competing across the region and the country in terms of, summer track. So playing against or going against, top people wasn't something that was new to me. Obviously, going into Notre Dame as a freshman, it was a new environment, bigger people, all these different things. But when you have the confidence and, the coaches backing you, it was kind of just like, go play football. Drew Tranquil, I owe a lot of credit to. He when I first got in the summertime, like I made it clear that Drew that I wanted to start, like I wanted to play my freshman year. And so when there were times where, some classmates in my class wanted to go out on the weekend or do something like that, Drew and I would go get some extra curls in, some extra triceps or something like that. But then we'd also watch film. We'd also go over footwork and do all these different things because he's learning the defense just like me at this point because it was a new coordinator and all those different things. So really took that, like really came in and just had a mission because I don't like when BVG told me and when I was in my recruiting process, like you're going to have an opportunity to start. Like it was Matthias, who I love to dearly to this day, who's like one of my closest and best friends. And then after that, he was like, it's going to be you and another freshman competing. And so I was like, I mean, if I'm going to have this opportunity to start as a freshman at Notre Dame and at Nickel, I was like, that's what I want to do. And so, because that was honestly my only path to start, to be honest, because you had Cole Luke, you had Kavari, and you had Max at safety, and you had Elijah Shoemate at safety. So all veterans, all people with the ability to play on Sundays. And so it was like, only thing, if I want to get on this field, it's going to be at nickel. So I kind of just I kind of put corner behind me a little bit, and was just like, I'm gonna know every single thing about nickel, because when they throw me in with the threes, the twos, or the ones, I'm gonna know every single thing. And so that's what I did the entire offseason. Just learn as much about nickel, learn run fits, learn, what we do in motion, what we do in, all these different formations and things like that. And so when camp came around, and I was just like playing, with the twos and with the threes, like I already knew the defense. I could just play, I could just run around and have fun and just use my skill set. And then when they just threw me in there with the ones, the only thing I had to do was just avoid Quentin Nelson and Ronnie Stanley and and those guys. And then outside of that, it was just, receivers that I just had to guard. And one of the good thing too about Notre Dame, I feel like, and I can't speak on other programs, but Notre Dame is such a family feel. I feel like sometimes when obviously the goal is everybody wants to play, everybody wants to go to the NFL, like it's kind of everyone for themselves. Whereas like Notre Dame, Will Fuller, Amir Carlisle, Chris Brown, like these are the receivers, and I'm guarding them. Just 17-year-old. I was 17 at the time, 17-year-old kid.
Oh, wow.
And can't. Yeah, I turned 18 August 23rd. But 17-year-old kid in camp, just like guarding these guys and doing pretty well. But like they were just coaching me up, saying like, do this, do that. Kavari, Cole, like all these guys are just, coaching me up and helping me. And even Matthias, once we got to camp, he's helping me, he's teaching me things. And so I thought that was like very unique. I didn't have to feel afraid to be great or afraid to make plays or anything like that, or even make mistakes. And so I think that was just a huge confidence booster. And I know throughout the years during my time there, I tried to do the same for all the younger guys. And I'm sure that's still the same culture here, which is why you see so many young players excelling when they get their opportunity. Is because I think, the culture and the it's a family feel to where it's like we want everyone to be successful. Because I think at Notre Dame, football isn't, the end all be all. It's, becoming a great person, graduating, really growing, within the community. And so, like I said, when I got on the field, it was just make plays and ball out. And I trusted my skill set. And I'm a 5'8", 170-pound kid. So I feel like I was always talented. Like I had to be talented for Notre Dame to want me, for me to play on that stage. And so I just went out there and just did what I could do.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like you're always been more physical than you might think, because you mentioned you're being a speed guy, but I don't feel like you've ever been afraid of contact or anything like that, which maybe is something that, coaches might have thought about you in the recruiting process, but clearly that was never the case. But kind of like I mentioned earlier, you came in, you put in all that work to get ready to, learn the defense right away. And then you kind of had it taken away from you too, due to injuries. What was that process like, knowing you had kind of like come in, put in the work and kind of achieved what you want to do, and then kind of got sidelined right away?
Yeah, I think like initial thoughts, of course I was sad and, all those different things. I wanted to play, never been hurt in my life before, never missed football season before. And so having to sit there and like honestly like be away from home, like they were hard. Like for me, I knew I could get through it. I knew I was in a position I was going to have the best treatment every single day. I was still going to be around the guys, and I still had a lot of years in front of me. So to me, it was like, okay, well, it's an ACL. Adrian Peterson, I want to say like a year or two before me tore his. So that was like the big thing where he came back better and he rushed for, I think, 2,000 yards after his ACL. So in terms of like the ACL, I was just motivated because I've seen people come back from it. Tyrann Mathieu, who was one of my favorite players, growing up, he had tore his ACL. So like seeing players that have done it and then just came back to me, it was just like, okay, I know I can come back. I've seen I've already set a precedent in terms of what I can do on the field. So now it's just take this time, learn, and get better and come back ready for next year. But honestly, the hardest part for me was like calling my family, because, obviously they're away from me. I knew they were going to worry about me. And then even just like my trainers and my coaches and just anyone who was supporting me, like leading up to that point, like I feel like they were going to be sad for me. And I honestly took that on where I probably shouldn't have taken that on, to where I felt like that I let them down because of all the work that they've put in, put into me, all the time that they put into me to get to where I'm at. And so that's kind of what hurt me the most, is like other people's like having to not be able to watch me, if that makes sense. Because,
Yeah.
I think we can all relate to this. Like, we've all played high school sports, and like how proud our parents were, or how proud our family members or friends were to see us run out there, on the field or court or whatever it may be. And so that, to that point, it was like, dang, like my parents don't get to see me play for the first time ever. My trainers don't get to see me play. And so that's what hit hard. Especially like it came across ESPN too. And then
Oh yeah.
like when no one knew, I was good. I was fine. I was rehabbing. I was doing my stuff. And then once it came across, everyone started texting me, and then I just like cut my phone off and just started crying. But like I said, after that, it was just now, once all those emotions were passed, it was just, get done, get this rehab in. And then like I mentioned Drew earlier, unfortunately, Drew tore his ACL the same year. I want to say like
Yeah.
like Navy game, I believe, a couple weeks into the season. And so that kind of turned things around for me in rehab, to where it's like it became a competition, a fun competition with Drew, having a buddy who, and Torian Foster as well. We all, was doing rehab together, and being able to just, go through that with people that you know really well, that you want to see be successful, made it a lot easier. But yeah.
So did the Achilles hit differently then?
Yeah, the Achilles was honestly, I mean, you see people tearing their Achilles now, and I'm like, man, it's such a brutal injury, to where people downplay ACLs now, I feel like, which is
Yeah.
ACL is still don't get me wrong, it's still a serious injury. Any injury is serious. But nowadays I feel like the ACL is like, oh, you'll be back in 6 months. Like, don't worry about it. You'll be better than normal, or better than you were before. But Achilles is like, everyone like puts it on this pedestal of the hardest, of a hard injury, which it is. And I think it's one of those things that you can like visibly see. Like, you can see
Yeah.
sometimes the snap, sometimes the pop, and then you see the expressions on people's faces. So for me, like coming out, you mentioned the interception, coming off the Texas game, it was like I waited I was sidelined my entire freshman year, worked out, off season, got back healthy. We played Texas week 1 in Texas, Labor Day weekend. And so the moment was set, like the stage was set for a great comeback. We ended up losing a game, but I ended up having a great game. And I'm like, this is where I'm supposed to be. There was some hype too of, top freshmen, redshirt freshmen, coming in, returning. And you see a lot of players across the country. Like Minka Fitzpatrick he was on my opening team, so we kind of developed a relationship, and I got to see what he did his freshman year at Alabama. Derwin James was another person on my team. He ended up I want to say he got hurt his freshman year or he might have played his freshman year at Florida State, and I saw what he was doing. So seeing all these players that like I've been on the field with and played with is like was a little challenging, but now I'm like, okay, this is my time to get back on the stage and get to where their names are, and and their status is. And so I feel like Texas put me right there. It was like, oh, this is the kid we've been waiting for, who makes plays throughout the game. And we get to the Nevada game, and yeah, I was running to defend a pass. And like I always tell people, like, when some people ask me about my Achilles, like, oh, did I feel it? Did I feel it popped? And my injury I felt different than the normal Achilles injury. Like, I was going up to deflect a pass that a receiver was trying to catch, and like I like twisted and turned on my ankle. And I didn't. It would because it was like so like in the middle of a play. I'm trying to knock it out of his hands and all those different things. I didn't really necessarily feel it. And then I ended up jumping. Like I landed. We fell on the ground, knocked the ball out. Drew picks it up. He takes off running, and then I ended up like jumping and celebrating. And then I feel like and then I landed, and like my left foot, I feel like never touched the ground. Like it
Oh wow.
never. Yeah, and so it just felt like it's like I don't like I always like tell people, like, you ever like step in like mud or something and like your foot is like stuck and you're trying to like pull it out. I think that kind of is what I can relate it to. So it's like when I touched the ground, it felt like my foot never touched. And so I just started like limping and walking and ended up just sitting down on the turf because I was like, I don't know. I thought it was a sprained ankle. But yeah, we get to the sideline, they tell me what it is, and I'm just devastated because it's like in that moment, the injury doesn't necessarily matter, but I'm thinking about the 6 to 9 months of recovery because it's like
Yeah.
I just went through this. I just did this. And so that's instantly where my mind went. Like in that moment, there was no pain. It already had happened. And now it's just like, I have to go through 9 more months of rehab. And so, at that moment, it's just one of those things where you kind of got to accept it. I think it was harder. It was definitely harder that year because freshman year, I was like, I'm motivated. It's an ACL. I can come back from it. I'm excited. I got a lot of years in front of me. Now it's like back-to-back years, and and then it's an Achilles. It's like, okay, well, I don't know where my career is going. I don't know if I want to stay at Notre Dame anymore. I don't know if, I don't know if I'm going to play again. All they're going to bring in new kids next year. Like all these different things are happening. But, to be honest, like all you can control is, yourself in that moment and what you have going for you in that moment. So, I took a while, like a month or so, to kind of feel sorry, which is a very long time, but I took like a while to feel sorry for myself in terms of, anyone out there who's listening to this. I don't do this, but didn't go to class, like just like stayed in I would do rehab in the morning and just go back to my dorm and just be all right. Because for me, it was one of those things to where I was also crutching around. I crushed around first semester fall, and everyone in my class, like freshmen, all knew that. And now I'm crutching around like my second year of fall. So same kids, and so it just for me, it was just like kind of an embarrassment type of thing, to where, and that's the stuff that people don't even think about too. Like when you're on campus, everyone's seeing you. You're doing the same thing. I'm rolling around on a scooter, and like people understand that I play sports, but it's like next year, same thing happens again. So it's just, I don't know. It was one of those things. So I kind of felt sorry for myself and just was like, ended up talking to the academic advisors and, some people like that. And they were like, okay, well, we got to get going and we got to turn this thing around. And I was like, all right, like, let's do it. And so I locked back in and, ended up being a great year. But that one was just a little bit harder because it was back to back. And like, I just didn't know where my career was going. I didn't know, if football was still a thing that I wanted to do at some point. But I give a ton of credit to just our training staff, like Rob Hunt, Tori, Bean. Like there's just a support that they gave me, throughout those times, and even Coach Kelly. Like I always, people have their opinion on Coach Kelly, but I would always love Coach Kelly just from the standpoint of he always gave me an opportunity to come back and play and earn a spot. I think you hear about some coaches where if you get hurt multiple years, or if you're not playing, or if you're not on the field by year 3, they might get you out of there. They might just, advise you to transfer, things like that, where it's like, Coach Kelly, we never had that conversation to, you should not play anymore, or, you should look elsewhere, anything like that. So I always give credit to, like, for me, in terms of, our relationship's always going to be strong because he gave me an opportunity each and every year. And then, Notre Dame support, everyone in the community was just down and by my side. So now looking back on it, people like praise me for it. And I'm just like, I was just a kid going through an injury, but
I mean, that's a lot that you went through. And I didn't even realize you were 17 when you had to deal with the first one being from home too. So that's
yeah.
definitely a lot to go through. But good call by Kelly because he still ended up getting, 3 really productive seasons out of you after that. And it's kind of crazy. I feel like I'm more familiar with Achilles injuries now, but you were back by game 1 the next season and playing again. Like that's kind of crazy that you came back from that and kind of got back to. Did you feel like you were the same player after that, or where did you feel like when you came back in 2017?
So I felt pretty good. I think you lose something a little bit, but when I stepped on it, like I did spring ball a little bit, and then over summer training camp, or over summer summer workouts, you really start to build that confidence. I think we play so much football and you compete so much throughout the year that I use that time to just gain confidence. And I think I think we might have played Miami of Ohio week 1 or Temple week 1, one of those teams, and it was really an opportunity for me to just just gain some confidence, go out there and just play fast, try to do my thing, and wasn't necessarily a starter. We were kind of rotated. Coach Elko came in at this point, and so we were like cornerback by committee. So I didn't necessarily have to have the burden of playing every single snap and things like that. But it was good. I think I came back and I was confident, and then just each game I started to just feel it. I started to feel good, and at that moment I didn't even think about the injuries, in season either, because it's just I'm here, I'm healthy. Every time I get to walk on the field and walk off the field, I'm blessed and I'm thankful. So I just kind of took it as that. I didn't really try to hold back in anything and like that. And I think every single game I got more comfortable to, us playing Boston College. And I think I had 2 picks in the fumble recovery that game. And then we later on played Michigan State, and I had the forced fumble in that game. So 2017, I felt really good. Felt like this is my moment. This is, this is what I've been waiting for.
And then I don't want to spend all the time on your injuries. For anyone who doesn't know, then 2018, you tore the ACL in your other knee, but then came back 2019, 2020, started both those years, moved to safety in 2020. And you're part of 2 teams that went to the college football playoffs back then. Of course, it was only 4 teams. What are some of the highlights that stand out to you about those kind of final few years on campus and what you guys were able to accomplish?
Yeah. Well, I think the senior year ACL was, I mean, I handled that obviously completely different, just, maturity level and things like that. But it was also to the standpoint of, like, I knew I was coming back the next year, and that was my senior year, and some of those guys weren't going to be back. So I really just wanted to cherish that year and have fun with them. And it turned out to be an amazing year. We went to the playoffs. And so that kind of just like set me up for the years going forward to really cherishing and and having fun at this university, like not making it all about football and wins and losses and things like that, but just really appreciating the people here in the moment there. And so by the time that I got to play my 5th year, and then later on in my 6th year, it was I'm just happy to still be here. I'm just happy to still be doing this thing, and with the guys that I love and with the school that I love. And so by that time it was just I was a veteran, so I knew a lot of things. I was able to see different coverages and play in different schemes, play under different coaches. Coach Terry Joseph, who ended up being one of my favorite coaches, and things taught me so much about the game. So although those injuries happened, and obviously in the moment they were devastating, I also just give credit to them, because some of my best friends are people that were young, not even in my class, but people that were younger than me that I got to play with. I just saw Tommy Reese yesterday, actually.
Oh, wow.
in Cleveland, and we were just talking about my career at Notre Dame, and I was like, what is crazy is I played with Matthias, who's probably like one of the older players that I played with, and I've also played with Xavier Watts. So, like, in terms of people that, and like players and staff that has gone through Notre Dame during my entire time there, I think it's special, because that's just a number of relationships that I have with a lot of people, a lot of guys that are still playing, some that aren't playing. And now looking back on it, it's just like, man, like the experiences that I had, I'm thankful for. Like, even now looking at it, if I had those injuries, like if I was healthy throughout my career, best case scenario, I go to NFL in 3 years, 4 years, and then now I don't even think about doing content, don't even think about doing the media and having a podcast and trying to make an impact elsewhere and give back to the community, like just because I'm all solely focused on football. So I truly believe like everything happens for a reason, and like those last 2 years really set me up and really gave me a perspective on what I wanted to do after football and who I wanted to be, and how I truly wanted to grow and develop.
Yeah, that's wild to think about that. Your career based on like who you played with, kind of, people from like I don't know, probably 13, 14 year span at Notre Dame, which is kind of crazy.
It's just
Uh
crazy. Yeah.
to think about. And I actually wrote it down. I looked it up and you like people you played with. I think there are at least like 40 players drafted that you played with at Notre Dame. 6 first round picks, I think at least 18 day 2 picks. I'm kind of curious, like who, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here, but who on defense do you think like stood out to you as like the best player, and who'd you go against offensively that, you would say is the best?
It's funny because I was just talking to some of my friends about this the other day. I think most dominant would probably be Will Fuller. I mean, he could just take the game over in one snap. Fortunately, I played a lot of nickel my freshman year, so I didn't have too much have to necessarily guard him too much. So that was definitely great. But honestly, I think the best player during my time there is Kyron Williams. And I always like go back to this play. Like literally every time I see him, we talk about this play. He caught like a curl route over the ball, and this was my last season when I was playing safety, and I like drove down on it, and it was 7-on-7, so we were playing. It was like two hand touch, and he literally like caught the ball. I don't know how he knew where I was, but like literally like did a move and juked me without even turning around and looking. And I just like whizzed by him and like I got him. But like just the conversations we've had or just we had right after that moment, I was just like, you're different. And then just seeing what he did, obviously in that Clemson game that year, and then just the rest of his career at Notre Dame. And then now what he's doing in the NFL, it's just like he's special. I mean, he's not the biggest kid. He's not the fastest, not the strongest, but man, he's a confident, just worker. Like he works harder than anyone. He wants to compete. He's also a great dude off the field. Great energy. So I would say him. Like I think he's just a total package, and I hope he has continued success in the league and stays healthy. On defense, I think Jalen Smith is an easy one. I think saying Jalen Smith is, like everyone, his career at Notre Dame was unbelievable, and being able to see him and just see the things that he was able to do is unbelievable. Like the confidence that he had in his ability to be able to just do anything. I remember against Stanford, it was I want to say a goal line play. I watched it on film, and I still have the footage like saved on my phone because it was so crazy. And he jumped over the line and like ran someone down and tackled the running back against Stanford. And so, just doing things like that, I think he was unbelievable. Um, Jeremiah Wusu-Mora is an unbelievable player, but I think I like selfishly because I got to spend the most time with him was Kyle Hamilton. Just playing safety with him, like he made me a better player, and he's unnatural. I think Jalen. You can try to find other body types, similar body types like Jalen in NFL. Jeremiah, similar, same as him. But Kyle, being a 6'4", 6'5" safety who can go sideline to sideline, play in the box, play deep. Um, and it looks effortless, which I think that makes everyone mad because it doesn't look like he's working hard ever out there. And so being able to just go out there and just have fun and float around and just be just the calm, cool, and collected person he is on the field and off the field, I think that's special. So I say Kyle Hamilton and Kyron Williams, which two guys who are still having success right now. So
Yeah.
it makes sense. Yeah.
Same draft class too. And honestly, I feel like Notre Dame, I mean, they get a lot of love for like offensive line you, tight end you, but I feel like safety, they probably are underrated in that conversation. I don't know what you think about that, but I mean, you look at Xavier Watts now, Harrison Smith as well. Like they have some dudes at that position that are up there with maybe the best in the NFL.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Notre Dame is probably underrated in a lot of positions. I know we get a lot of credit for our tight ends and our linemen, of course, but I mean, I think you look at corners for a while. Like I think we were doing really we are successful there with Benjamin Morrison, Julian Love, who switched to safety now, but. I mean, we had a run. Like I think that comes with recruiting. But I think we're recruiting the right players. I think, and you see that in terms of winning and how far we're going. I think with Coach Freeman, being able to go to the college football national championship, actually, a lot of guys on that roster are probably going to start, popping up on Sundays. And now you can say, we got Kyron Williams, we got Jeremiah Love, coming, hopefully next. And so it's just, I think we're just going to start to see more and more positions start to elevate and do well in NFL because one, I think Notre Dame prepares their players better than, and from experience, I know Notre Dame, prepares their players better than a lot of universities when they get to the NFL, just from preparation, consistency, grit, all those different things like that they teach at Notre Dame. It really shows up, when you get to the NFL. And so uh, the success that we tend to have, at that next level is not a surprise.
So you kind of touched on this earlier, but you ended up getting 6 years at Notre Dame because of the injuries. I know you got your degree and then a master's degree as well. And you still ran, I think it was a 4.47 at Notre Dame's pro day. So you still, despite all the injuries, still had a lot of your speed. But maybe I'm guessing, do you feel like that impacted your ability in the NFL? Kind of all you had to go through at Notre Dame, or do you feel like you were still mostly the same player? I'm kind of curious now that you can look back on it, what your thoughts are on that.
Um, I never I never told myself that I was ever less of a player. I think you just adjust. You adjust your game, and there's different things there's flashes of like, I remember my 6 year, there would be like freshman year, I could just rip and run and do anything and do crazy things, get up, fall down, do all these different things. Whereas like now in my 6 year, after two ACLs and Achilles and elbow injury, I'm like, I gotta pick and choose when to when to do wild things. So you just kind of adjust your game and play smarter. And so not necessarily just rely so much on athleticism and just until you have to really like tap into it, I guess. But I never tried to think about, man, if I was healthy, where would my career be? Because that's not reality.
Yeah.
I could sit here to this day and be like, man, if I never got hurt, I'd be year six in the NFL and a max contract, and hope, and but I also couldn't be. I could have been really healthy and still didn't get an opportunity. So I try not to just live in just the what ifs, and just try to make the most of where I was at that point in my career. And so, just having to do extra things, like having to do extra rehab, having to do extra treatment, not gamble as much, maybe play off, maybe take, like, instead of playing corner at 6 yards off, play it at 8 yards off, like doing those different things and studying more. So that way, I can't be a step ahead physically, but I could be a step ahead like mentally. And so I think that's the changes that you have to make, as you get older. And I think you see that with Harrison Smith now in NFL. He's still playing at a high level. And you said, so I think, that's the thing. And same with injuries. I think like you definitely lose a step. I don't think any competitive person is going to admit and say, oh, I lost a step or I'm not the same person, because then you're giving an edge to your opponent. But, for me to just go out there and still perform well at Pro Day, um, I like to call myself a freak. No matter, I like to say, like, I like to say that, hey, like, through it all, through the injuries and through the ups and downs, like I still was able to go out here and perform, with some of the best and people who are completely healthy and those different things. And so, but I feel like for me to still have those injuries and still come back and start every year, I've already been blessed. I've already, showed that I still have it. So that was just nothing. That was like nothing new to me. It was just another step in the process.
Yeah, I mean, for reference for everybody listening too, that would have been the fastest time at this year's pro day for Notre Dame too. So yeah, that's kind of incredible after all you went
I
through.
mean, I mean, if the L cone, the shuttle, like the numbers, the numbers were good. So, I mean, but that's just, I think but I think it just goes back to just like I'm not like the biggest kid. I'm not, I'm not a freak of nature or anything like that. Like I think I was very skilled. Like I said before, like I ran 10.5. I ran 10.5 and 100 meters as a sophomore at
Wow.
15 years old. So like I've been in situations to know that I've, am athletically blessed and, those different things. And so when the injuries happened, it was never just about me getting, rehabbing and, getting back to getting healthy. It was just, there was a lot of uh, divine intervention, I would say, just to just keep me going forward, and a lot of great, treatment from our staff that I mentioned earlier. It's just I gotta give a lot of credit to, a lot of the factors that I didn't see that were going on, and then also just a lot of people that put into me as well, to just be back on the field and perform at a high level.
And I know you did have a stint with the Raiders as an undrafted free agent, and then I believe you were released like a little bit before the season. I'm kind of curious how that period after, like transitioning from, I mean, I'm sure you were still trying to figure out the NFL thing, but it sounds like that's also a time period where you started looking into, getting into the podcasting, maybe some of the foundational stuff for Varsity House Productions. I'm kind of curious if you could look back on that time and how that set you up for what you're doing now.
Yeah, so actually with the Raiders, I ended up getting hurt there, but it was like different. It was like a sciatic nerve type of thing,
Oh man.
which was like very different, very new. And then at that point, it was like one of those injuries that kind of scared me just because it was a nerve. And knowing like Jalen Smith is a close friend of mine, and he kind of had a nerve thing completely different, like nothing. I'm not trying to compare injuries, but comparing the fact that it was a nerve and just, how severe nerves can be. Um, got released from there. So even when I got back, I came back home to Cleveland. I was kind of just rehabbing for months because I really couldn't just do much. It was it was kind of like a grade 2 hamstring with the nerve. So I kind of was just rehabbing, doing those different things, and uh, once I got healthy, ended up like it was the off season already. Didn't necessarily get invited to any more camps, and so for me, I was just like, and I'm sure every kid who comes back or who gets released and things like that. This is like the first time that I didn't have a schedule. First time that I didn't have a place to be or a practice to go to, film to watch, all these different things. And so that was just unnatural for me. I already had just went through months of it once I got released and been back home. So now at this point, February, Super Bowl just happened, all that stuff ended. So March, April, I'm just like, what do I want to do going forward if I can't? Because I'm at this point, I can't control my own destiny. I don't know. Notre Dame was great because I could get hurt. I know I got another semester. Like I know I'm going to class. I know spring ball starts. I know all these things. Summer workouts come in the summertime. So I know all these things are guaranteed. Whereas like now, I don't know if I'll ever put on a pair of cleats or a helmet again. And so in that moment, I was just saying, you know what? Like let me just use this opportunity to go out and reach out to all the people that I've just come across at Notre Dame and just my football career and like start a podcast. But it all started honestly during COVID, which because that's when live sports stopped. Everybody started doing podcasts started to pop up, more video podcasts on YouTube, and so that's all I would watch. I would play video games and do a little bit of homework and watch podcasts. And so when we got back to school, finally, Ian Book was my roommate, and I was like, "Yo, Ian, like, I'm gonna get some podcast equipment. Like, let's just do one this year. Like, we can't go out, we can't do anything. So I was like, let's do one." season ended up coming around. I was in grad school. Things happened, classes, season, all these different things, and so we ended up not. We just never did it. So I always had for a year. I would say for a year I had an interest in doing it, and then I also did Bailey Cartwright. She had a podcast. She was a soccer player at Notre Dame called
Okay.
Stronger Scars was the name of her podcast, and I actually went on it twice, and so I've never talked about my injuries until her podcast, and so she gave me an opportunity to just open up and talk and just share with her because she had injuries as well, and so that was kind of the theme of her podcast was to feature people who have gone through and come back from different injuries, and just ever since that moment, like I think we have two shows on there, and I think both are over an hour and a half long. So I was just rambling. I was because this was the first time that I was able to just express myself and like really talk about them. And so because at Notre Dame, I mean, like the questions that I would get would be like, "Do you feel old?" or "Are you coming back for a seventh year?" And it was like those questions, and I kind of just got tired of them. Where it was just like I was, and to where maybe in the media, it was obviously the questions that you wanted to ask, but to me, it was just I was just getting tired of them. Like I think looking back on it, I probably should have just been more open and saying like I'm going to stay here as long as I can to try to better my chances at going to the NFL, which was my goal and which is what I did. And so, but fast forward, I get done 2022 um, goes by, and so I'm trying to figure it out, trying to figure these things out. Uh, going back to Notre Dame games, figuring out what I want to do, and then or that's 2021, and then 2022, I ended up starting a podcast and was like, I'm gonna go all in on it, and just reach back out to just people that I've had a relationship with, and so yeah, so that's what I did, and it's been cooking ever since. You talk about me being at Notre Dame for so long, like that helped me with my podcast to be able to go out and reach back out to a Jalen Smith who I've played with, all the way up to Kyron and Kyle and Coach. Didn't play with Coach Freeman, but had a great relationship with him. Coach Kelly, Coach Clark Lee. All these different people, and then a lot of people within the community knowing my history and knowing my injuries. I think that also gave me the ability to reach out to a person like Brady Quinn. Never talked to him, never met him. Obviously didn't play with him, but I just told him, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is my mission, and he was all for it. So, I think looking back that, during those injuries and those tough times, it was miserable. I hated them, but without those times, I definitely wouldn't be here today, and I definitely wouldn't have the relationships that I have, the mindset that I have, and the transition was I would say easier for me because I always felt like I maxed out. I didn't I didn't I like I didn't have it. I didn't have another bone, another ligament, I didn't have another thing to give to the game of football. If it wasn't the NFL. Like so I obviously wanted to play in the NFL, but for me I wasn't going to go play in the UFL or any other league like that because one, I played at the pinnacle in college, and for me I was just like I can't do that. And then also with the injuries, I was like it just doesn't make sense. Like I'm ready to start something new. And so I would say the transition over from football is always hard. But for me, it was a little bit easier because, like I said, the injuries just made it clear for me. And then just the idea that I had in my mind of like, let's just start this media thing and see where it goes. And I did it, and luckily had some big guests that really helped me kick it off.
Yeah, and I mean, I follow you on, Instagram and social media. It seems like now you're at a point where I mean, I see you've been in France a bunch recently. You're at the French Open. It looks like you were just in Cannes for some stuff. I've seen some videos. It looks like you filmed with some of the Rutgers basketball players who just got drafted. I've seen some clips of you working with like Deshaun Watson. Like I'm kind of curious on where you are now. It seems like you're doing a lot of different stuff on the production side. How did it kind of get to this point? Was this always your vision, or have you just kind of always been like flexible and let's see where I can find my angle and work in different ways?
Yeah, no, I definitely just started off just wanting to do a podcast and just going and interviewing as many people as I can and just trying to have like real authentic conversations. Because I wanted to know like who the human is behind the helmet. That's what interests me the most, especially with my injuries, is trying to figure out, and have real conversations. I didn't want to ask about your stats. I didn't want to ask about football too much, but like your upbringing, who you are as a man, your family, things like that, where you come from. Those are the questions that always interest me, and I felt that we can all relate to as athletes, coaches, players, and then also as fans and as a listener. And so going out for a year and a half with Varsity House Podcast, I learned a lot. Like I was producing and editing it on my own. I would come up with questions. I would find locations to shoot. I would source videographers in certain areas that we would shoot. I would control the set, all these different things. So like I started to just naturally learn to produce and run a show. And so the year after I left, NIL started, and Kyle Hamilton and his roommates, they had Inside the Garage,
Oh, right. Yeah.
which was a great idea. And so they did that. I actually was a guest on one of their shows, and so went through that and that year, and I was just like, okay, I think the next step that I want to do with NIL is, because I learned so much in producing my own podcast, why don't I just go and try to produce, student athlete led shows, similar to literally same concept to Inside the Garage. So shout out Inside the Garage for being inspiration for Irish Scoop. But yeah, so and everything, and it was just a perfect timing. I think I was having conversations with um, Notre Dame and some people the year before about trying to do this thing kind of more in house to see if we can set it up and just me like white label it and just produce it and it'd be run by Notre Dame. It ended up not working out. So then the following season, Jordan came and it was just like, I mean, it was just perfect. The stars aligned and things like that. And so that's really how Varsity House Productions got started. Well, it was just like I learned so much from doing my own stuff. Now let me take what I've learned and start to give back to these student athletes, because not everyone's going to make the NFL. Not everyone's going to have a long career. But I see this as a resume builder. This is, you get live reps on a legit production show. You've seen it. And so
Yeah.
being able to just put someone in the seat and have them interact with their teammates and have fun and, make it cool and all those different things is, I think this sets them up for the future. Not only is it, working on public speaking, but it is, that resume builder that every regular student can now, can definitely do, because they have more time in the summer and different and things like that. So I like to say it's a glorified internship, a really cool internship, paid internship. So I think it's just, I think this is only the start. And so then, from there, the production stuff just like stuck to me, because I think I'm really honest with myself. I understand that I am not what brands want to pay for, to see and hear from. So I think that I have great relationships with people that brands do want to pay for and put money to, whether that is a Notre Dame athlete, whether that is a professional athlete or whatever, or a team. Those are the things that makes sense. And so now, obviously, with NIL, a lot of money getting pushed towards it. So my thing is, if I can boost up an athlete, if I can, help them just overall, as a person, not just as an athlete, and get them paid using just our production and things like that, our creative ideas, then that's the goal. That's my mission, to just try to be impactful for the next group to come. And so that's pretty much where it started. And so we did a after Irish Scoop, that was really successful. It got connected to Rutgers University, and so where we actually filmed a docu-series following Rutgers basketball this past season. They had two top five picks. They had two top five picks, Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. So kind of, I mean, it advanced. Obviously, it moved from producing a show, a talk show, to doing a docu-series that'll actually come out in July on Peacock. So it's just moving along, and I feel like a lot of things are just happening. One, because I can kind of relate to these players. We can talk about the game if we need to talk about the game. Um, I would like to say I know what is cool, so it kind of just helps a little bit. But and then now, just taking like getting experience. I got to experience the French Open. Former teammate of mine, Jerry Tillery, he had extra tickets out there, so we went out there and we celebrated that. And now, because we are a production company, I'm always going to keep a camera on me, and so we're always going to shoot something. We're always going to post something, because especially if it's sports, and that kind of just led to more and more opportunities. Being able to do things. And Cannes Lions recently, and I mean, from the companies like Netflix and Spotify and Pinterest and all these different companies, just being able to just connect and meet and network, especially for the things that I want to do with the projects that we have, coming up or trying to, put out. It was just another place for me to just go and, try to further this brand. But, I think it's just a thing that Notre Dame probably instilled in me, to where there's no limits, from the people you meet, from the person you could become. I think Notre Dame instilled in me that there's just no limits, and, you're not just an athlete, you're not just a football player. And so, now I'm just trying to hopefully be a role model for other athletes, that don't play on Sundays. And just try to make an impact, daily and, hopefully yearly, and continue to just come back around, especially at Notre Dame.
That's really cool. And for those of you who don't know, like, you should definitely check out the Irish Scoop. It's a podcast you did, as you mentioned, with Jordan Clark last fall through the season. And you filmed at Murphy's Ice Cream Shop and then put the episodes out. But you had a bunch of guests on. Jerome Bettis, Ian Book came back, uh, Jeremiah Love, Christian Gray, like a bunch of the players. Jordan interviewed them. And as you mentioned, I also got a kind of behind the scenes look, and I think that was something that I think it's interesting that you recognize in yourself, that like the production aspect was a place you thrive, because in the story I even wrote about it, like, you just kind of, I don't know, you knew where to always be, and you were kind of off frame, like giving notes, bouncing around, and you just seem very much like in your element throughout that whole process. So it's interesting that that's something that has grown from there too.
Yeah, I think that's something to where, I have fun doing it. I think because I'm passionate about it, it doesn't feel like work at all. And I understand that, one, I don't ever want to try to, and I mean this in a good way. Like, I don't want to waste anyone's time. The Murphys are doing us, a tremendous favor in letting us shoot there. And also just even come up with the concept and say, hey, like, this is the concept, but it has to happen here. And for them to say, okay, cool, yeah, let's do it. Like, I mean, that like, it was great. For Jordan, like, he's just finished. And, for people who don't know, like, I won't say the day we shoot, but I don't want people to just come by. But
Oh
we
yeah.
shoot like after the games, and for Jordan, who just played a game, and whether he's tired, sore, family's in town, all these different things, he, never late, always showed up on time, always, stayed late, gave a great effort, just was an amazing, person to work with. And then even for our guests never, were always on time. No one ever canceled. It was just a great feel and great energy around the environment. And, I wanted to do my part in really making it look good. I think I'm big on production, and I think, being able to produce something at a high level allows you to, find more work. And I think because of that, like, because of how I believe how good Irish Scoop looked and how professional it was, and that presented the opportunity to work with Rutgers, on something a little bit bigger. And so it's just creating more opportunities, for these student athletes to get out and do something cool. Like, you know, there's podcasts, there's a bunch of interviews that I'm sure that they have to do, but I don't want this to seem like another interview. I want this to seem like a great, fun time where they can just, sit back, relax, and just be themselves. And so that's the environment we try to create. We'll definitely recreate it again. And I'm definitely excited for year two.
Yeah, we touched a little bit on it off camera, but Jordan Clark obviously is with the New York Jets right now, so he's moved on for Notre Dame. So you're going to bring back the show again. Can you talk a little bit about what that's going to look like and how you hope to build off year one?
Yeah, so I really only had one guy in mind, and it was Cam Williams. And luckily, I didn't need to look for it. I didn't need to look any further. But last year, uh, I think this is important. But we had a few guys who were just normal students at Notre Dame. They worked in FIM for a little bit, just as like freelancers. They were students, and they would come in and they did some intern stuff. They would shoot behind the scenes. They would help with come up with questions and things like that. And so being able to just utilize students on campus who want to be a part of it and want some experience in production and things like that, we are looking for that. We haven't made an announcement yet, but we are looking for that just to help throughout the year, because I do think not only are we going to try to provide work experience for the football players and the athletes that come on it, but we also want to provide work experience for the other students at Notre Dame as well, who are into production and media and things like that. But with Cam, we also invited him out to one of our episodes to just check it out and watch it, because I had in mind that I wanted him to do it. And so I was like, hey, if you're free, come out, check this out, see if this is something you want to do. Because I know he does on the mic with Cam, on the Notre Dame's page. So I knew he was comfortable being in front of the camera. He can ask questions, he's already familiar, with the fan base. So he's a Chicago kid. So it just made sense. And, him being there, him showing up, he actually got behind the counter and served some ice cream. And so he was having a lot of fun. And so, I think that he's going to be a perfect fit. I'm excited to announce when we do announce, that he's the next one up. And I just think that, which is great, is because he's a receiver. Last year I had Jordan. Obviously, we didn't get a quarterback on. So hopefully this year we get a quarterback on, because they got that relationship. So it'll be unique. It'll be an interesting season, and we'll try to throw some different guests on there. I know last year we had Hannah. We tried to mix it up a little bit. We had Hannah Hidalgo, and we had Jerome Bettis, who steer a little bit away from the typical football or the current roster that we had on. So we'll try to mix it up a little bit more like that, and just highlight other sports, highlight other athletes.
But I'm kind of curious on how doing that show with kind of in conjunction with Notre Dame has kind of helped you stay connected to the program in a way that you might not be otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's just it's a funny way how just I think life works. Like I had no like that's why, and I said, like, if I was healthy and I was in the NFL, it's like, so the relationships that I have and the community that, like, even like while playing at Notre Dame, I didn't utilize, and this is to everyone at Notre Dame and even at any school who's a current athlete, like, utilize the network that you have while you're there. Try to connect with people, try to make the most of it, because when I was a player, like, every year, like, I got hurt my freshman year, it was like, okay, I'll be two and done. I got hurt my sophomore year, and I was like, okay, I'll be one and done. I wasn't one and done, and I was like, you know what, I'll leave my senior year, and ended up getting hurt again. So I just feel like, just take advantage of, be where your feet are, and take advantage of the network that you do have there. And so now, being able to do the podcast and reconnect with a lot of the Notre Dame community and people who went there and who are involved with it, it motivates me to be back, because I know there's going to be a kid who goes through Notre Dame and is going to be in my position, who never sees the field, who sees the field every year, and just different situations. And I just want to just try to be a role model and be someone that they can touch, someone that that they can really be a resource. I'm an entrepreneur. I think that a lot of things nowadays, content is involved, whether it's short form, long form, TikTok, YouTube, all these different things. And these are real career now. And so traditional media is, I would say, over. You don't have to go to journalism school and, film school to have your own show. Um, and so I want to try to be a resource for these kids, and and I think all this gives back. All this gives back to their brand. All this gives back to their impact in the community, and it's fun. It's fun at the end of the day, and so that's just like my goal. And Notre Dame has been, again, me being there so long. I still know some people in the building, and that gives me the access to be able to come in there and and have these conversations with them. And so, everything happens for a reason. I was at Notre Dame for 10 years for a reason. So I was, and now I'm just like trying to give back, using the relationships and the resources that I still have there.
Taking up a lot of your time. So the last question I wanted to kind of get into, and I've heard you, obviously given when, Coach Kelly left, who was your head coach the whole time at Notre Dame. I know you've come out and defended Tommy Rees a few times. I'm kind of curious if you can talk a little bit about the dichotomy of like you're a Notre Dame alum. You obviously have a relationship with a lot of the current players, Marcus Freeman, but then you also still have these connections to people that maybe the fan base isn't as high on. But how I guess could you kind of discuss how you defend them a little bit and how you kind of see those relationships in a different light?
Yeah. I think the special thing is about Notre Dame is we have high standards. Um, and I think we are fortunate to be upset with someone who's taken us to two playoffs, 14 playoffs, and a national title. And so and I think when you are a part of this community and you're a part of this fan base, because it's been so long since we won, we expect excellence. We expect to win. We expect to be the best and those different things. So I think I see it from that point of view, and I understand that. For me, I feel like knowing Jordan and knowing some of the, like Jeremiah, the games are more. It's like I'm not watching it as a fan. I'm watching it as a person who knows these guys and just wants to see them be successful, walk off the field healthy, all those different things. Obviously, I always want to win. And then even knowing Coach Freeman and the things that he's doing and the success that he's having, always rooting for him. And then guys like Coach Mickens, who was my cornerback coach when I was there my last season. It's like I want all of them to be successful. And I feel like for me, I always just try to point out the success that we did have when we were there. And to not let emotion, because I feel like sometimes emotion clouds judgment for sure, to where, there were things that obviously we didn't play to our best when we played in the playoffs and things like that. Coach Freeman has, I would say, had the guys ready and prepped better to get to the point where they got to. But I could also argue that, like, this is just me. Like, if I actually wanted to argue, I would say, like, we played Clemson's, like, so we played Alabama, probably one of the best teams that ever, suited up. We played Clemson. If you look at that roster, like, some of the, one of the best teams that ever suited up. Georgia, like, I can, down the list of teams and we didn't lose to many teams. We lost to the best teams. See, so, and then now we talk about beating Penn State and we beat Georgia and things like that, where it's like, I don't ever want to try to compare talent, because I feel like that's what they do with the NBA now. It's like, oh, back in my time, playing was different. The players played harder and things like that, because none of that matters. I think at the end of the day, we got to prepare and we got to beat the team that's in front of us. And I think we did that when Coach Kelly was here, Coach Rees, Coach Elko, Coach Lee. We did that when they were here, and we're doing that now. And so I think that, we're just going to keep hacking away at this, until we come across a national championship, because I mean, we're getting closer. Like, you get to the national title and you lose to an Ohio State team that everyone says spent X amount of dollars in NIL. Jeremiah Smith he's gonna be one of the best. Like, he's gonna be one of the best players if he stays healthy to ever, probably play this game. Like, you see those things, and these are teams that we're playing, and these are teams that we're competing against. And it's like, we're getting there. I think it's gonna like it's continue. I think it's a continuous journey. And I think Coach Freeman is doing an amazing job at just bringing the right guys in, bringing the right staff in, and just keep hacking away at it, keep hacking away at it. But I'll definitely get in there and on Twitter, like if I want some engagement, I'll get in there and say some stuff. Like I love Notre Dame football Twitter because it's easy to get engagement. Like I could say anything about Coach Kelly and someone will call me like they'll be like, "Oh, you don't know, like you're just you're biased and things like that." Like I always get in there and be like, I always will say Coach Kelly is a top 5 to 7 coach in college football right now, because if you just look at what he's done in this resume, it's just really hard to argue. But that doesn't take away any credit from what Coach Freeman is doing or what. And so I always want to make that clear to where it's like I'm not defending one or defending one regime or anything like that. I just really value and respect what Coach Kelly did, and I lived it, and I saw what he had to go through to get the program where it is, where it was for Coach Freeman to take over, and I see where Coach Freeman is taking it. And I think both things can be true, that they're both great coaches. One is cooler, I would say, to the like. I mean, I think that's just the thing. Like one guy is cooler to the media. He comes off as more relatable and personable and things like that. Where one may be more of a CEO type of guy, and it is what it is. Different coaches have different personalities, and everyone's not going to be loved, everyone's not going to be liked, but if you win games, they'll put up with you.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter.
definitely.
It doesn't matter how cool you are, how how nice of a lineup you might have. If the wins don't come with it, no one cares. So I think that the fact that Coach Freeman is winning games and being relatable and personable, I think that's just a new age of where we are with coaches. They have Deion Sanders, Fran Brown. I think that's just the new age of coaches, and with social media and having to do NIL recruiting and picking kids up in Ferraris and like it's just a different age, different and some people get with it, some people don't, some people are better at it. But at the end of the day, I think every single coach Notre Dame has had is going to try to win a national championship, and our fans are gonna push you to do it. Like
Yeah.
so hey, all it is just work hard and just hey, we'll just we'll see when it happens.
Yeah, well, any Notre Dame fans listening to this, if you aren't already following Shaun on Twitter, it sounds like that's definitely the person to do, especially before the fall. And
Follow me before the fall, because we'll have some. I always want to try to do more. I want to do more like fan engagement interaction stuff too, because some fans have great things to say. Like some fans have been Notre Dame fans longer than I even knew about Notre Dame, and so and I think Twitter's a great thing too, because everyone has a voice. And being able to just share your opinion is great. No one's I won't say no one's wrong, but some people are right, some people are wrong, and at the end of the day, is we can have a discussion, and everyone wants to win a national title. So we're all coming from the same place. Like at the end of the day.
definitely. Well, thank you so much, Shaun, for being one of my first guests on here. And the first one I've definitely interviewed. Um, yeah, I really appreciate it, and good luck with everything you're doing with Varsity House Productions and the Irish Scoop. And yeah, I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, no, thank you, appreciate you.